shock of all shocks, Alabama is recruiting very well. Luke Robinson of Locked On Alabama is here to discuss their recent surge. They had 5-star safety Jireh Edwards. They had 4-star Nolan Wilson as well. Let's start with the big picture impact of these two guys, Luke, because I think that a fair question to ask about Kalen DeBoer when he went down to Alabama that I remember hearing and reading about a lot. How is he going to recruit? He didn't recruit that much up at Washington. But Alabama, my take was always, I think Alabama's going to kind of recruit itself. I think he'll be okay. And, year one results, not super great, or on the field anyways. But boy, this feels familiar, frankly. As someone who's not an Alabama fan, this feels very familiar. Alabama's got a 5-star safety, another blue chip. They got a top 5 class right now. This feels like the expectation.
Yeah, I think he's doing a great job. It's kind of funny. There have been some folks poking fun because there have been some pictures with some of the recruits taking pictures with Nick Saban, right? And so people are saying Nick Saban is having to step in and help. And I can tell you, I know this very well, that Nick Saban is not even around the office very much. He happened to be there one particular time when Kalen DeBoer was at the funeral of Keelan Russell's sister. And so Kalen DeBoer had to leave the recruiting visit weekend a little early to attend that funeral, which is totally understandable. And Nick Saban did happen to be at the facility at that time. And, of course, if you see Nick Saban, you're probably going to want your picture made with him. And a lot of the recruits got their picture made with him. But in the end, it's been kind of funny to see some of the other parents take to Twitter and say, look, I don't know what y'all are talking about. Kalen DeBoer is one of the main reasons we're going to Alabama.
Yeah, I am not surprised, unfortunately, to see that the internet has run with that sort of thing. Because when you're seeking confirmation bias for an idea, and I saw some, Washington fan accounts on Twitter also throwing this around, like, oh, look, DeBoer can't right, because they're still bitter that he left, and that's normal. I think that's normal. Doesn't mean you have to take it to that extent, of course. But, with Xavier Griffin and Edwards both in the fold, that's a couple of 5-star prospects, and Bama's recruiting at an incredibly high level. Do you think that they have a chance to push for the number 1 overall class? Like, do you think they can catch USC?
Well, I think they could catch USC, but not for the reasons you think. I think USC will probably end up losing some commits ultimately. They're at 31, I think, right now. I don't think they end up signing 31, or at least I don't think they end up signing this 31. And I think that Alabama's probably only going to sign between 22 and 23. That's my guess. I mean, it could be 24, could be 21. But I don't think it's going to be much more than that because you've got to play it really smart now. You have more scholarships to give, but you also have to consider your budget. And Alabama's doing a fantastic job, in my opinion, of getting some 5-stars along with some high-value, high 3, low 4-star guys. For instance, when you look at Alabama recruiting wide receivers, they definitely have a type. First of all, they got the Cedarian Morgan, who is a 5-star from my hometown of Alexander City, Alabama. And he's committed to Alabama. He's 6'3.5", 6'4", 220. He is an Adonis. I mean, he's a specimen. He's also a fantastic basketball player. He's a go up and get it guy. Yeah. Does he need to improve his route running? Sure he does. He is not as proficient at route running as, say, Amari Cooper. Okay. Does he have the moves of Jerry Jeudy? Nope. But you know what? Those two guys didn't have his size, and so they didn't have his strength. Cedarian is a unique animal, and he's, by a lot of accounts, he's the best wide receiver in the country. Now, they also got 2 other receivers, one named Owen Cabell out of Tennessee, high 3-star guy who I think will ultimately be a 4-star. He came to Alabama's camp, ran really well, surprisingly well even. And again, 6'3", plus or minus, about 200, really, really good athlete. And then you have Brian Williams Jr. out of Florida. This is another guy that is 6'3", plus or minus, but, only 180, but he's got 10-inch hands. So you can't really teach that. That's pretty large. That gives you a big target right there. So Alabama is going after some really tall targets. And so they have a type. Now, if only Cabell and only Brian Williams Jr. were the 2 wide receivers they were getting, I could see where somebody might say, that's nice, but it's not typical Alabama. But when those two guys are your 2 and 3 guys behind Sedarian Morgan, all of a sudden, that is a banner wide receiver class, if you ask me, especially in these times when it's going to be really hard to have a class like Alabama did once with Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and Devontae Smith. You're not going to see a lot more of those type classes because those guys are going to command wide receiver 1 money, and they're going to want that money. So I think Alabama's doing a great job of finding some big-time stars, at the same time getting great value out of guys like Cabell and Williams, who I think ultimately will be really good players.
Well, let's talk about these two guys that we mentioned to begin this segment. Let's start with Jireh Edwards, a 5-star safety, the last 5-star safety everybody thinks about, of course, with Alabama, Caleb Downs. And I think Alabama's defense missed him quite a bit this past year. And I'm not saying he's the only reason that Bama didn't make the playoff or the only reason Ohio State won the national championship, but he was a factor. Like he was a pretty sizable factor. Is this Caleb Downs round 2 in your view, or what do you see from Edwards that excites you for the Crimson Tide's future?
I love Jireh Edwards. Comes from a fantastic high school program. Alabama's already got a couple of dudes on the roster that also came from that program. They're both transfers, but still, it's nice to have some familiarity on the team. I love Jireh Edwards a lot. I don't know if he's Caleb Downs. I think Caleb Downs is a unicorn. I just thought he was incredible. He was just the kind of guy that whatever he does, he's going to be great at. Now, Caleb Downs wasn't like the strongest guy or even necessarily the fastest guy, but he's sort of like Ryan Williams. I mean, he's just got a sort of an it factor you can't put a finger on. Jireh Edwards, you can definitely tell where his strengths are. I mean, he's a heavy hitter. He's got good speed, good range, good instincts. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. I think he can come in and play right away. Again, this is another one of those situations. Alabama flipped a kid named Rael Kelly from Rutgers, who's also a safety. And again, a high 3-star guy. And he comes in with Jireh Edwards. So you got the 5-star. And then you also flipped a guy who's a high 3. He played it in Cincinnati. He plays at a big-time program. And you flipped him from a Big Ten school. So you got your number 1 safety is really the number 1 safety in the country, and your number 2 guy was committed to a Big Ten school at one time. Those are 2 big gets. So it makes Alabama's safety class look great.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that sentence uttered before. Alabama flipped a kid from Rutgers. That is newish to me in the recruiting space.
Well, think about this. I'll tell you some other things that are going to be newish. If you flip a kid from Texas Tech right now, you're pretty doggone.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it means you're probably flush with NIL cash. Yeah. And
yeah.
I don't begrudge schools for doing that. I don't begrudge Texas Tech at all. They just got 5-star offensive lineman Felix Ojo because they gave him a 3-year, $5.1 million deal. And you know what? If you got the money, why wouldn't you care to try to go out and win? Luke, why don't you wrap today's show talking about Nolan Wilson as well and what he brings to the Crimson Tide going forward?
Love Nolan Wilson out of Mississippi. I love the fact that Alabama's reached back into Mississippi. Mississippi's been one of those kind of funky states where sometimes it can be tough to get a guy out of there. See Caleb Cunningham last year that was committed to Alabama for quite some time, ended up flipping to Ole Miss kind of later on in the process. But Nolan Wilson, big defensive lineman, he loves Alabama. And number 2 defensive lineman in the country by some accounts. Miami made a strong run and apparently probably made some strong offers. Again, I'm not begrudging them. This is the era we live in. When you say somebody made a strong offer now, you're not saying it in a nefarious way. You're saying that's just what it was. But my understanding is he just was dead set on going to Alabama. I think he ends up signing there ultimately. Again, these are all commitments, so everything could change. But I think most of the guys that are committed to Alabama, in fact, I would venture to say all of them will stay in this class. It feels like they're all working towards something together. And I think they've got a golden opportunity here to be sort of Kalen DeBoer's 2008 Nick Saban class. And they can start a new dynasty run, hopefully.
Yeah, and that defensive recruiting also, I think, something that is a pretty big emphasis, at least in my view, when you have the first-year defensive results that Alabama had, and Kalen DeBoer being an offensive guy, there's a good place for Kane Womack and that defensive staff to be in right now. Good gets for the Tide. Luke Robinson, always a great get for us here on the show. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.